I'm Andrea Miller, president of the National Institute for Reproductive Health and the NIRH Action Fund. We're the first national organization in this field dedicated to advocating for proactive state and local policies that advance just and equitable access to reproductive health care, including abortion. I'm so excited to welcome you to our periodic series, The State of the Reproductive Union, which brings together leaders working in the trenches to reimagine what it looks like to fight forward for a better future. The National Institute for Reproductive Health and NIRH Action Fund hosts this series because our strategy has long been to go on offense. We don't just play defense. We pass laws that safeguard and expand access to abortion and contraception and advance maternal health and health justice in states and cities across the country. We do this always by working hand in hand with reproductive health rights and justice organizations and champion policymakers on the ground, because we know that the only way to make real impact, create lasting change, and achieve true reproductive freedom is to build power at the state and local level. After all, we've seen countless fights and countless rights and freedoms start or stop at these seats of power. As you undoubtedly know, this Saturday will mark 1 year since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. That devastating move unleashed a wave of state abortion bans and created a host of new, more restrictive environments, now spanning roughly half the country, with 15 states having banned abortion as of today. I'm sure you've heard the stories of the tremendous, unprecedented, extraordinary harm to the health and well-being of those needing abortions and pregnancy care, those providing that care, and their loved ones. But for our organizations, like NIRH and the NIRH Action Fund, that's not the whole story, because our focus is on doing what's needed to push forward state and local policies that actually expand just and equitable access. And we've seen remarkable gains, even against the dire backdrop of Roe's demise. In fact, since Roe was overturned a year ago, we've seen unprecedented wins, bold and innovative ways that our partners and elected allies are enacting groundbreaking policies and programs that not only expand abortion access in key states where it remains legal, but also mitigates the harms where abortion is severely restricted or banned. According to new data that we just released here at NIRH, state and local governments invested more funds than ever before in new reproductive health care initiatives focused specifically on expanding abortion access, reaching a record total of $208 million in new targeted programs that do three things: support abortion care access through grassroots abortion funds, support practical support organizations that do patient navigation and support travel and lodging and childcare, and investing in clinical services and specifically abortion providers in the reproductive health care infrastructure. That's the most funding we've ever seen dedicated to these kinds of initiatives. And it happened in a single year, as at least 15 localities and additional 6 new states really stepped up. And that's more than triple what we were able to secure in 3 full years leading up to the Dobbs decision. This is exactly the kind of momentum that NIRH has been working toward for more than a decade. Starting in 2019, we began to see a number of states create their own protections for abortion rights and access. Perhaps even more exciting for us, though, was the handful of cities that started to utilize NIRH's policy models to trailblaze new funding programs for abortion care and practical supports. We've long pushed for this because getting state and local government to invest not only expands the number of people who can access abortion care, it also means that private philanthropy doesn't have to foot the whole bill. And we know without these kinds of programs, abortion can remain out of reach for far too many. The other exciting area of innovation is around so-called shield laws, which provide protections for patients, helpers, and providers. Policymakers in 14 states have broken new ground with these never-before-seen laws. 11 of them enacted these shield laws just in the last year since Roe was overturned. And they make clear that these states refuse to be complicit in any other state's attempt at criminal prosecution, civil liability, or professional sanctions against those who provide abortion care, and often against patients or those helping them. In some cases, these states are coming back again to keep innovating, like New York just did this week, extending those protections to cover the provision of abortion through telehealth as well. These are the kind of proactive policy wins that go to the heart of the work we do at NIRH and the NIRH Action Fund with our partners. And tonight we'll be exploring with many of them, advocates and elected officials from Florida to Minnesota to Virginia, who are fighting forward in these uncharted times. Before I bring them into this conversation, I just wanted to take one more moment to share how I and NIRH are thinking about the future as well as the past. There's no denying that losing Roe, and with it a nationwide standard for abortion rights, was heartbreaking and painful and has done devastating harm. At the same time, we really need to be clear-eyed that what got overturned a year ago was a tattered, weak framework that never guaranteed meaningful access, especially for marginalized communities forced to navigate racist and discriminatory systems. As I shared in Elle magazine with some anecdotes about my history this week, Roe was a response. It was arguably a revolutionary one for its time to a reality in which abortion bans were killing and maiming those who needed to terminate their pregnancies. But subsequent Supreme Court cases and more than 1,300 anti-abortion state laws led to an era of incrementalism designed to effectively ban abortion without saying they were banning abortion. And it was those working to make ends meet, young people, rural communities, Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color, those needing abortions later in pregnancy, who got left behind. Those 1,000 cuts, the alleged compromises we were asked to make, never satisfied anti-abortion operatives, and they never will. So it's on us to demand a new framework that includes everyone, no matter their zip code, their age, race, identity, or socioeconomic status, because despite its promise, Roe ultimately failed to do that. So now is the time to follow those with marginalized experiences so we don't repeat history. It's a time to forge a path that creates equity and justice in abortion care and guarantees everyone the freedom to control our bodies, our lives, and our futures. And to that end, I'm thrilled to share that NIRH and the NIRH Action Fund are announcing 17 state initiative launching in year 2 of our post-Roe reality, representing places where NIRH and our partners see unique opportunities to address maternal mortality, forge meaningful abortion access, mitigate the harm that people continue to experience in states where abortion is banned. We're excited to partner in states with anti-abortion majorities in their legislature and in their governors, because we know we can create new ways to mitigate harm and hold elected officials accountable. We'll be in friendlier states, forging new paths that go beyond the old Roe framework, working hand in glove with state advocates to bolster investments in abortion, funding for abortion care, expanding access to later care. And in purple states where we have maybe only a pro-reproductive freedom governor or a mixed legislature, we're investing together in administrative advocacy and supporting community-based groups advancing legislation that will ultimately pass and seeking to elect new champions. Each of the partners with us tonight are in these opportunity states. We've worked with them before. We're going to keep working with them. And as you'll hear, the work we're doing together is designed to go beyond the tattered Roe framework that the Supreme Court swept away a year ago. So with that, I'll pause with one housekeeping item. We're hoping to have time for Q&A after we've heard from all of our special guests. So if you think of a question at any point, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type your question. We'll go to our moderator. We will try to answer as many questions as we can, but we also want to get you out after 60 minutes. So if we don't get to your question, feel free to email us at events@nirhealth.org. And with that, I want to give a shout out to the so many partners who I know are watching this evening. And I'm honored to do a very quick, brief intro of the partners and allies, a quick rundown of whom you're going to hear from tonight, and then we'll turn it over to a conversation with them. So we have with us Florida State Representative Ana Escamani, a committed reproductive health rights and justice champion, fighting for Floridians on the front lines in her state legislature. Aisha Perry Iqbal, a model turned activist who will be sharing her story of abortion later in pregnancy and the role that current abortion laws play in shaming and stigmatizing people like her, even under Roe. Shayla, the executive director of Our Justice, an abortion fund in Minnesota, providing direct financial and logistical support for people seeking abortions. And Tarina Keene, executive director of Repro Rising Virginia, an advocacy organization that uses the political process to guarantee every individual the right to make personal decisions regarding the full range of reproductive choices. So with that, we're going to kick things off with Representative Escamani. If you want to join me here. She's been a true champion, a great partner to NIRH in Florida, fighting an uphill battle in her state legislature, but encouraging her incredible fellow lawmakers to lean into a strong affirmative message on abortion access, advocating for proactive policies, and even getting some great victories at the local level in the meantime. I can say that she's a bold fighter for everyday people. Born and raised in Orlando, she's the daughter of working class Iranian immigrants who came to this country in search of the American dream. And as a first-time candidate in 2018, Anna flipped the legislative seat she was running for and is proud now to serve as a state house representative and has won both of her re-election campaigns in a landslide. And you're all going to see why in just a moment. It's such an honor to have you with us here today, Representative. Clearly, anyone who cares about abortion access or really any number of our cherished rights and freedoms has probably been following trends in Florida this past year. So I have a couple of questions for you. First up, give us a snapshot of where things stand in the Sunshine State and the role that Florida plays in terms of abortion access in this post-Roe environment.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to share space with NRH, and just so grateful for everything y'all do, especially helping us in Florida, where we are in very difficult environment and polarizing climate. Many folks know that, Governor Ron DeSantis has been not only running for president, but using the legislature and his position to boost himself among a conservative base of voters. And in doing that, passing very extreme legislation, whether it's attacking LGBTQ plus people, attacking immigrants, or in the context of tonight's conversation, attacking abortion rights. And so for years, because of Florida's strong right to privacy in our state constitution, we actually have been the safe place for abortion care in the South. And as we saw other states ban abortion before and of course post-Roe, abortion seekers came to the Sunshine State for help because we were a state that had not mimicked Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, etc. And so for this past year, we've been seeing a huge influx of patients coming from other states. And of course, Florida passed a 15-week abortion ban last year, and that is being litigated still today in court. In fact, the very first judge who saw this said it was unconstitutional under Florida's right to privacy, but the state appealed that decision, and thus it still went to effect. And I have to tell y'all, we are now currently sending many of our patients who need abortion past 15 weeks to North Carolina, which will no longer be an option with the 12-week abortion ban that took place in their state. Fast forward to today, we just ended the 2023 legislative session in May, and Governor Ron DeSantis and the supermajority Republican legislature pushed forward a 6-week abortion ban. I'm very proud of our caucus. I'm the lead on abortion rights issues, but our caucus stepped up. We're only 35 strong, but we filed more than 50 amendments to try to stop this ban. And of course, in that process, highlighted how dangerous it is, the lack of exceptions, from a religious freedom perspective, how it's not reflective of different ideologies and different religious commitments and practices. And so with that said, the governor was delivered this bill at around 10:30 at night in the middle of session, signed it by 11 o'clock to a private invite-only audience, and of course is now running on it as one of his campaign to-do, as one of his check boxes. Now, it's important to note that Florida's 6-week abortion ban has not gone into effect until we have a decision on the 50-week abortion ban. So as soon as we hear from the Supreme Court on that, assuming we don't win that case, because candidly, I'm expecting the new conservative Supreme Court to not protect right to privacy in Florida, then 30 days later, that 6-week abortion ban will go into effect. So that's the landscape as it stands today in the Sunshine State.
So feels like a lot of setbacks. I'm sure that's very frustrating, although you obviously really put up a good fight. I know you did. I know your colleagues did. So obviously, we don't want to leave everyone feeling like there's no hope, because we really always want to look for what are the paths forward. So what would you say has really inspired you since the Supreme Court overturned Roe? And, what's it like to be in this sort of champion place in a state that's hostile, but perhaps you see other ways that, you find positive momentum?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing for us in Florida is we're not backing down. We're going to the voters with a ballot initiative. So, we have been inspired by success in other parts of the country. And of course, we know what the polling says. Majority of Americans and Floridians support access to abortion. That's not reflected in the legislature, but due to things like gerrymandering and voter suppression, the legislature does not reflect everyday people. So we're not giving up. We have already hit the ground running. The campaign went live on May 8th. Floridians Protecting Freedom is the name of the campaign. And I'm really excited to let y'all know, and this really isn't public, but we've almost collected 250,000 signatures. And it's only been 6 weeks. And of course, this is going to be a very expensive campaign. It's not going to be easy. We do have to go through Supreme Court reviews. The same Supreme Court that's going to, look at our abortion ban and has to approve our language for the ballot based on different statutory requirements. And so we've triggered that review to begin soon, now that we've hit that 250,000 threshold. And our goal is to collect 1.3 million before February of next year to get on the November ballot. So honestly, what gives me hope is just the enthusiasm. When I ask people, have you signed the initiative? They're ecstatic. They want to help. And just the incredible volunteer force around this initiative and the different funders who are stepping up to assist us. I have so much hope for just a proactive vision, which is something that NRH does so well, is let's not just, wallow in the place of despair. Let's realize that the antidote to despair is action. And there's so many proactive things you can do, whether it's at the municipal level, as we've worked on NRH with on different protections, whether it's protecting our clinics or trying to have abortion funds at a local level, or in the context of something like a ballot initiative. Don't give up, don't let up, and stay focused on a long-term vision that goes beyond Roe.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was perfect. That's why I told everyone, you're going to see why she keeps winning in a landslide and why she's such an amazing champion. My goal is that you'll be governor of the state of Florida one day, if not beyond. So we have even higher hopes for you. But thank you so much for your incredible, fierce advocacy, for being such an amazing partner to us, and just such a light of hope and inspiration for people in Florida and beyond. Because clearly, you're in DC because you're a star, and we're going to see you everywhere. So I can't wait to see what comes next. And we are so grateful to be in partnership with you and everyone there in Florida. So
they're back at you.
Looking
for the Q&A. I'll see y'all at the end of the panel.
Sounds great. Wonderful. Well, I am so grateful. I mean, that everyone's going to be amazing. I'm so excited about tonight. I'm so grateful that our next guest, Aisha, has agreed to join us tonight to share her abortion story. So I'm going to ask Aisha to turn her camera on if she can.
Hi,
Aisha. It's so good to see you. So let me just give a brief introduction. So Aisha Perry Iqbal is a US-based Pakistani former curve model and activist, born and raised in the United Kingdom. Through her content, Aisha shares her authentic journey with self-love as she navigates her life in the fashion and entertainment industry. The honesty of her own experience with domestic violence and abortion rights has afforded her many opportunities to work with not only major brands, but also with international organizations such as the United Nations and the National Domestic Violence Helpline. Aisha's story is a powerful testament not only to why we need more just and equitable laws that trust women to make the decisions that are best for them, but also to why we have to make sure the policies we champion don't internalize the kind of shame and stigma that the anti-abortion movement promotes, because that too causes so much harm. So Aisha, thank you for taking this brave step with us and being here. Please share your story.
Firstly, thanks for having me too. I really appreciate it. This is actually the first time that I'm sharing my story publicly. So what a great platform to do it on. I found out I was pregnant at 24 weeks for lots of different reasons. I just didn't know I was pregnant. I tried taking pregnancy tests. They all came up negative. And then maybe the 6th one I took, during that time, I found out that I was actually pregnant. Obviously, that means that you have a pretty quick turnaround to figure out what it is that you want to do. At the time, it was completely impossible for me to even find someone to give me a scan. so I could figure out actually that I was 24 weeks. So I stumbled along an organization that I thought was pro-choice, but it was actually a pro-life place. So when I got in there, it was a really horrible experience. They were showing me images of fetuses from like day one all the way through to when it's born. And they were coming, it was really interesting. The girl in there, she was coming really close to me and like saying, you getting rid of children is terrible. They gave me a pamphlet as well that basically said that late term abortions, they crack the skull of the baby, they break all of the limbs, you're likely to die during that procedure. So obviously I was petrified. I then ended up paying a private clinic and they told me that I was 24 weeks and they were just like, congratulations, you're going to have a baby. And I was just so shocked because I was like, wait. And they were like, well, you're past the limit in California, so there's nothing you can do. And I was like, wow, I just feel like I have no choice, no rights, no nothing. And I think the doctor in there could see my face. He could see that I was really like just unhappy about this scenario. And he gave me a contact to a clinic in Colorado. I called them. They explained the whole procedure to me. They were actually really great. But, you know, I have been afforded the position to be able to travel for a procedure, to be able to have the finances for a procedure, and to be put in a position where I have people to support me and take care of me and look after me, where I was able to go to Colorado and make the decision for myself, be put in a safe environment in a private clinic that was giving me the opportunity to terminate my pregnancy with no judgment. I really felt like even when Roe versus Wade was in legislation, which it was at the time that I had my abortion, I still had to go out of state. I still had to go to another clinic, a private clinic. It wasn't an option for me as someone who was 24 weeks pregnant to pick and choose what I wanted to do. And I also feel that the later on you are in your pregnancy, the more scary it is and the more support you need. And I think that overall it was just, there was people in my life that absolutely were against me. They judged me for my decision, ultimately ending friendships of mine because of my decision. But it also made me closer to other people who really respected me and supported me during the way. So I think even after coming back from my procedure and knowing that, you know, it was the decision I wanted to make and I don't regret the decision at all, I then had to go through all the postpartum things that you go through in the same way as if you had a baby there. I just didn't have the baby there, and nobody talks about it and nobody makes you aware of that. It's a long process. It's not just, oh, I make the decision, I go in and have my procedure and then that's it, I forget about it. No, you have postpartum hair loss, you have postpartum depression, maybe your body's changing, your boobs, you're still having milk coming out your breasts, like you're a completely different person. And it's changed my life forever. It's changed the person that I am. I would say for the better, because I've learned so much about myself and I've learned so much about this process. But I think if I wasn't already in therapy and I wasn't already in a place where I had great coping mechanisms, this could have completely taken me under because of the lack of support and information that is out there in society and the judgment and pressure that is put on women to be forced to have children that they're just not ready for, they just don't want.
Wow. It's really, first of all, the fact that you were willing to share your story for the first time with us it's really, truly an honor. And I'm very grateful. And I know I can speak for everyone at NIRH, how grateful we are that you're willing to speak your truth. And, you know, I think one of the things about the work that we all do is how important it is to understand that everyone's circumstance is different. And we are not in a position to judge someone's circumstance. And I think what you experienced is a great example of that. And so I'm so glad that you were able to get the care that you needed and deserved. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that kind of shaming and stigma that no one should have to go through. So thank you for telling your story. And thank you for reminding people that there are people out there who will do everything they can to try to dissuade you from getting the care that you need and deserve. I mean, that is your story of saying, you know, you went to a place, you're in California. Let's remember, this is California, right? This is like, you know, progressive California. And you end up at one of these, you know, fake clinics that I'm sure the information they gave you was not only frightening, it's usually a lot of misinformation. They're usually chock full of lies, all designed to try to prevent you. And obviously they didn't try to help you get healthcare either. They were just trying to scare you. That was what they were trying to do, and try to dissuade you. So I think that, unfortunately, that you're not alone in that being the experience, where you need to get scan, you can't get to a scan. You're like, oh, this is free, I can go there. But it's not free, because the price you pay is that emotional abuse and the lies that they do. So
Yeah.
really,
When it's already a really scary circumstance to go through
Exactly.
on your own. And, you know, as you were saying about the stigmas, it really is nobody's business what the decision is as to why you decide to have an abortion. Like, it's nobody's decision. It's the same way as if you go and you have a tumor and you decide, do I want to get surgery to get rid of the tumor or not? It's my private healthcare. It is my right to do what's best for my body. And the judgments that I see online about, well, you know, well, she was right to have it because if this was her circumstance, she was maybe raped or whatever the scenario is they say, but because she just didn't want it, that you're murdering a child now. And to me, I just don't think that that's right. It's nobody's business, and nobody will ever know your circumstance and your situation other than you, the person living it, in the same way you should be able to make that decision.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect place to say thank you for telling your story, for being so brave, for joining us this evening, and stick around for the Q&A. I think
I'll be back.
Thank you. So now we'll be hearing from another fierce advocate and fabulous NIRH partner, Shayla from Our Justice. So Shayla, if you want to turn your camera on, Shayla is a proud Black Dominican American living on occupied Dakota and Anishinaabe land, also known as the Twin Cities of Minnesota, which is also where I was born and raised. She's an award-winning reproductive justice advocate who has dedicated 10 years to this movement already. Shayla is currently the executive director of Our Justice, an organization that advocates for reproductive justice and provides support to abortion seekers in the Midwest. In 2019, she began shifting the organization's internal orientation towards centering rest and healing, economic justice, and mutual aid beyond just abortion support. And under her leadership, Our Justice's scope of work has expanded to include lodging support, free emergency contraception, and safer sex kits. So Shayla, I imagine that what Aisha shared really resonates with you, given the work that Our Justice does to help women and others who become pregnant access abortions. Would love to have you, I have a few questions for you, but let's just start out with, can you just speak a bit about the work you do at Our Justice and let people know what an abortion fund is? I think many people who are joining us this evening might, but I think it's really important for them to understand what Our Justice does and what abortion funds do.
Sure thing. And thank you for having me here. Peace, everyone. My name is Shayla, and I'm an executive director of Abortion Fund. And what we basically do is what it sounds like. We fund abortions. We give money to people who need access to abortion care. As far as we're concerned, like we did some digging some research. We are the oldest abortion fund in the nation. One of the first abortion funds to pop up. We were here before Roe v. Wade. Our organization started with a few clergy members and community members coming together, raising money to get people their care or giving them rides to their care. And I always like to highlight that we start from clergy folks, like religious folks. They're often left out of the conversation when it comes to abortion, or they are often pitted like as they're like the others. But we were started by people who have a really strong faith background, and that faith guided their steps to, support people in accessing this care. So that's one part of our history that I'm particularly proud of. But yeah, today we're doing the same thing that we were doing in the early 60s and 70s is, paying for people's abortion care. So we have a lot of relationships with clinics, mostly clinics in Minnesota, and developing relationships with clinics across the nation, because even in a state like Minnesota, where we have a lot of protections, we're still sending people outside of the state for care. Just like Aisha said in her testimony, which was really beautiful, and much love to you, and thank you for sharing. But yes, we still send people who are Minnesotans outside of Minnesota for care. We send them to Colorado, we send them to DC, we send them to Maryland, just because the lack of providers, unfortunately, who are able to provide care. And, that's the work that we've been doing over the past couple of years, is just making sure that we're expanding legislation so that more providers can provide that type of care in Minnesota.
It's such a great segue to my next question, which
Yeah.
is, can you first of all share a little bit for people who aren't, obsessed like I am with all the states, and particularly states I've
Sure.
lived in, of which there are many, including Minnesota. Share a bit about what's changed recently politically in Minnesota and help people understand. You just started to go there a little bit, but maybe tell people why, as an abortion fund, you have a lot to do, but you've also made the kind of policy advocacy that we do together at the state and local level such a core part of your mission. So what's changed recently politically there in Minnesota, and why is advocacy at the state and local level such an important part of what you do now?
For sure. So at the state level, we have a Democratic House, Senate, a pro-choice governor, and an AG who knows what's up. So we are very, very lucky in Minnesota for that makeup.
And that's the first time ever, right?
First time ever.
First
Yes.
time ever.
We've never had this.
Yep.
So this was like a really hopeful year. Back in 2019, we became a plaintiff in a lawsuit. So we sued the state of Minnesota because there were laws on the books that went against our state constitution. So like Representative Escamani in Florida, Minnesota has some really like strict privacy laws when it comes to like our state constitution and accessing abortion. It's already embedded in there. Thanks to some work our justice did back in 95. We sued back in 95 to get that in the Constitution. So between 95 and 2019, there were bad laws being passed. We sued again to get those bad laws off the books. And we got some relief on our lawsuit last summer, right after the fall of Roe. And then with this legislative session, they actually removed almost all of them, just except for one, which we're still going to work on. So they removed most of the laws. So yeah, we're doing it through legislation. We're doing it through litigation, whichever way we need to make sure that people can access care and have the law on our side. Our small but mighty team is going to do it.
Awesome. Well, you are indeed mighty. So speaking of that, tell us a little bit about some of those wins. There's some local funding, there's increasing Medicaid reimbursement, which sounds funky, but I think people need to know why that's such a core part. It's part of what we do in a number of states and why we're so excited to work with you. Like, why does that matter?
Yeah, so we had, in addition to the lawsuit and working on the state level, we did some funding on the county level and the city level. So the city of Minneapolis actually allocated some funds to abortion care, which, if we get into the real nitty gritty, it can go to abortion clinics, but just can't go to abortion. So we still have work to do there. And same with the county funds. We got county funds allocated to abortion clinics, but it just can't go to abortions. And so getting people like more comfortable with actually funding abortions, like that as a fund, that is our main goal, is to make sure that people are able to access it, and that the funding that we access through city, county, state level allows them to do so, not just like goes to, I don't know, putting paint on the ground to determine like lines and stuff like that between the city and the abortion clinic. So we did have some wins, but there's still room for improvement there. And then the Medicaid reimbursement, that's one thing that we've been working on. The clinics in Minnesota, they have not seen any reimbursement rates increase since, in over 10 years, I believe. And so, that means a lot of patients who have Medicaid are going to the clinics, and the clinics are eating up the cost of those patients, and they cannot remain open. It's not sustainable. So we did go to the legislature this year, ask for a 50% increase, which would, allow the clinics to break even. So not even make any money, but just break even and not be in the red. They gave us a 20% increase, which I said, okay, but we're going back. We're going back next session, even if it's not a budget session, because, you know, there's money there. We have a surplus, so we're going to get our money. It's not if, it's when.
I love it. I love it. That's so fantastic. Anything else that you want folks to know about sort of, you know, what comes next for our justice and for Minnesota? What else is on the horizon?
Yeah, well, like I said, there are a lot of providers who need some relief, and we center the most vulnerable communities, and that is our Medicaid patients. And without that increase in reimbursement, we're not going to be able to see the clinics expand their services. We're not going to be able to see the new clinics that have come into town to like since, you know, the fall of Roe. We're not going to be able to see them expand their services to Medicaid patients. So that's really right. That's really why this is important. That 50% increase will make all the difference and will allow a lot more patients to be seen. Yeah, so that's what we're working on.
Well, we're hopeful, and we're happy to be side by side with you in that. And hopefully we'll have even more to celebrate, and we'll keep pushing that legislature to do the right thing. Keep doing the right thing, more and more of it. So thank you so much, Shayla. Thank you for what our justice does. Thank you for being such a wonderful partner and such an incredible advocate. So let's see, where are we? We have heard from Rep. Escamani about being a reproductive freedom champion in a deep red state. Aisha has shared her deeply personal story with us, and Shayla has explored with us what it's like to be in a state that is now just starting to see what it's like to be able to do the right thing. And also do that with the cities too, and keep encouraging them to be even better. So for our final speaker, I'm delighted to have Tarina Keene here to share the roller coaster that is Virginia when it comes to abortion rights and access, which we hope soon will just be a constant upward trajectory. Tarina took the helm of Repro Rising Virginia in January 2008 as the organization's executive director. She also serves as the lobbyist for the organization at the Virginia General Assembly. And in these roles, Tarina is responsible for Repro Rising's mission to ensure that all Virginians have access to the full range of reproductive health care options, no matter their geographic location or their socioeconomic status. I think one great example that some of you may sound familiar is that Tarina led the charge against the now infamous mandatory ultrasound bill passed by the legislature in 2012. Anyone remember transvaginal ultrasound becoming a big galvanizing movement all around the country? Well, that was Tarina. She's also the founder and chair of the Virginia Coalition to Protect Women's Health. So welcome and thank you for being here, Tarina. So NIRH and our Action Fund, we've been in there with you, with Repro Rising and other advocates in Virginia for what, 8 years now, I'd say. We've been working together.
At least.
And we've had some good victories.
Amazing victories.
And we've had some challenges. So a lot still needs to be done. Wanted to have you start out by giving the audience a quick line of sight on that roller coaster that I mentioned, the trajectory of abortion rights and access in Virginia, and what's the current state of play there on that? What's happening there in Virginia? What role is the Commonwealth playing in the post-Roe landscape?
Absolutely love to give you all of that. So thank you again, Andrea, for this opportunity to share this with everyone. Virginia has definitely been on quite a ride for the past decade. 10 years ago, we had an anti-abortion trifecta in Richmond that pushed through a trap law and regulations, and then also tried to pass a 20-week ban, as well as you mentioned, a mandatory transvaginal ultrasound bill that landed us in national and international news and brought thousands of protesters to the Capitol steps. But fast forward a decade, Virginia is an abortion destination state, a safe haven for those whose states have banned or severely restricted abortion post-Roe. So here's how we got there. We started talking about abortion out loud and proud. Once Virginians saw and felt the threat of losing their rights and access to abortion, there was an awakening, and legislators saw how that translated at the polls. It was really a beautiful epiphany. But when we couldn't make complete change overnight, of course. So we got to work alongside NIRH, and we did a deep dive on messaging research, candidate media training, and also policy development. Legislative session after session and election cycle after cycle, we kept making gains each time, little by little. It felt like a slog, but we could definitely see the light. So then in 2017, that was a gubernatorial year, and coming off of the heels of the Trump presidency, momentum was on our side. We swept all 3 statewide seats, but I'm not kidding. We missed flipping the House of Delegates that Republicans had controlled for more than 2 decades and outnumbered Democrats 2-1 by a tie election, where a name was pulled out of a bowl to choose the winner. Not kidding. It is a true testament that every vote counts. But in 2019, we partnered up again with NIRH Action Fund for a robust ground game and conducted our first fully layered campaign using NIRH's most up-to-date messaging research. And we mobilized reproductive freedom voters by knocking on nearly 50,000 doors. We produced and hung over 29,000 door hangers. We sent more than 11,000 pieces of mail and called over 10,000 voters. And we reached people by digital ads. We reached 365,000 people through digital ads. So again, using an abortion forward message, we helped flip the House and established a reproductive freedom majority for the first time in Virginia's history. And then that set us up for 2020, because after years of preparation and in consultation with NIRH, we introduced the Reproductive Health Protection Act. And that bill repealed 5 of the most egregious barriers to abortion in our code. It included a decade-old trap law, a 24-hour waiting period, the mandatory ultrasound with a 24-hour waiting period as well, state-mandated bias counseling, and a physicians-only rule. So now in Virginia, nurse practitioners and certified nurse midwives can now perform first trimester abortion. It has been an absolute game changer for Virginians. And now in our post-Roe world, patients from all over the South are coming to Virginia to get the abortion care they need and deserve. However, we only held our trifecta for 2 years. And in 2021, our statewide offices and our House of Delegates flipped back to anti-abortion control by the narrowest of margins. So while abortion is still legal and accessible in Virginia, we do not have an affirmative right to reproductive freedom and abortion. And now our good fortune hangs on our General Assembly elections this November. All 140 seats in the House are up for election, and abortion is definitely on the ballot. This is the first election on our newly redrawn district lines. And our primaries were just this past Tuesday, and we had some amazing victories for reproductive freedom. But our new governor, Glenn Youngkin, you may have seen him jet setting around the country, because I think he's running for president, has been promising an abortion ban since the very hour of the Dobbs decision. And we believe him. And that's why this is a must-win election.
That's amazing, Tarina, and thank you. It has been quite a journey, to say the least. So can you share, obviously the elections are front and center, and we're looking forward to working with you and hopefully flipping that other chamber and keeping the one that's good right now.
Yeah.
And seems like there are things that we know we can still do in the near term, even with a governor who is so hostile to reproductive freedom. So can you just share a little bit about what's on the horizon? Hopefully on the horizon, so that folks have that in mind.
Absolutely. So we have an off election year here in Virginia, and as I mentioned, it's a huge one. You know, every day the stakes get higher for Virginians and those who need refuge inside our borders. We're basically surrounded by states that have already banned abortion. especially with North Carolina's most recent 12-week ban. That also includes a 72-hour waiting period and 3 office visits. So people are going to skip over North Carolina. It was a destination state, but now we have to meet the challenge of people who are going to be coming to Virginia. Because we are soon, unless things change in Florida and South Carolina, because those things are tied up in the courts, Virginia could be the only Southern state without a ban. So in order to remain that central access point in the South, that means that we have to prevent an anti-abortion trifecta from controlling the General Assembly and the executive branch on November 7th. Right now, our state Senate has 1 vote standing in between abortion remaining legal and accessible and an outright ban. So when I say this is a must-win election, it really, really is. And beyond that, though, we must keep our heart and our souls and our eyes on something that's bigger. And that's what the activists here in Virginia really are doing. We are looking at something that will truly change the trajectory of this fight. Something that will shut down injustice and let the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia truly have a say about their bodies and their lives and their futures. And that is that we are going to go after a constitutional amendment for reproductive freedom.
That's awesome. That's so exciting. And the best thing about that is the governor has no role in that. So
Absolutely
too
not.
bad, buddy. Too bad. Get it through the legislature. You can't do anything about it. It's
Absolutely.
very
Absolutely.
exciting. Very exciting. Fabulous. Well, thank you, Trina. That was perfect. You covered everything we were hoping you would share. We are perfectly on time, so stick around. I'm going to ask all the panelists we've heard from, all the amazing leaders, advocates, just extraordinary humans, to pop back on with your cameras, and we will open it up for some questions. So if other folks want to join us, come on back. Hello, Anna and Aisha, Shayla, fantastic. All right. So folks, ask away. I'm sure we didn't answer everything you wanted to know.
So we have a couple of questions. The first one is, what can people in solidly blue states do to support abortion access and reproductive access in other states?
Shayla, do you want to start? And then I'm happy to pick up. And Tarina, even though you're not a blue state, you can certainly say something about this as well.
We've always say donate to abortion funds and practical support groups because they're the ones who are getting people from one state to the next state. I would also say donate to aid access as well and repro care, because those are the folks who are getting people their care regardless of which state they're in.
Excellent. Tarina, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, absolutely. We have to make sure that patients have the ability to actually access the care that they need when they need it. And because we're seeing Virginia being one of those critical access points, especially here in the South, but we're seeing people coming in from Texas and Missouri and other points from the Midwest as well. But we can't keep doing that if we don't win this election. So making sure that the folks that are working on the policy and the political side of things too, that they have the resources they can to win these elections. Because if we do not, if we don't do that, then we will see more states fall. And we know how committed the other side really is. And they really are well resourced. So those are obviously we want to make sure first and foremost that our patients are covered. And then we need to make sure that we're winning elections so that we can pass those comprehensive policies that will protect abortion access across the board.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to know that in this day and age, you can actually participate in helping support by getting voters to turn out in the fall in Virginia. So you can do that remotely. You don't have to be there in this wonderful digital age that we're in. And that is a huge benefit and a huge help. And I would say the other thing, and I know, let me let Anna get in here. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, just from a policy perspective, also thinking about how do you expand your providers, like scope of practice, for example. Some states restrict abortion access only to doctors. So let's look at opening it up to nurse practitioners, other types of providers. We work really closely with abortion doulas. So let's consider like opening up the care. There's also been, a really big movement around self-managed abortion. Abortion can be very safe at home if you're able to access the abortion medication, which we know, thanks to the FDA. And now obviously there's a court battle on that front too. But let's kind of think outside the box, right? Like when we have restricted ourselves to clinical settings only for abortion, it has made it easier for anti-abortion extremists to block access by going after the clinics, right? So let's not like repeat history. We can kind of go beyond what maybe is like traditional and something we're more comfortable with, and think about other ways to expand access to care to help those abortion seekers from other states, but to also expand access for those who live in those states as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that even if you are in a state that is even protecting access to abortion, if it is one of the nearly 20 states that have safeguarded it in your state law, there's still a lot that can be done. There's still probably not enough funding to abortion funds. You may not have your state doing that yet. You may not have your city doing that yet. That would go a long way. So these opportunities are really there and that matters for people who are coming from out of state, because those are the people who are really increasing the volume of requests and needs that you're hearing in states like Minnesota, in New York, in California. People are coming in and they don't have the resources. They don't have coverage because they're coming from states where abortion is banned. So of course they don't have coverage for the procedure. They need the practical support. They need the cost of the travel and the lodging covered. They probably need childcare covered. So you can do stuff in your own state that will actually help people coming for abortion care as well, if they're coming for clinical services. So it's a great question. Next question. I think we have time for this one more.
So the question is, what should we be doing now to help people being harmed today prevent further erosion of protections for reproductive health and regain lost rights?
I think everybody here probably has something they can say to that. Want to just popcorn it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's also understand that every state's going to be different, right? And so get to know what your state's local needs are, identify those abortion funds, tier 1 abortion funds, because we have to think about the immediate need and then the long-term vision, right? So the immediate need is that we have abortion seekers who need access to care. Many who don't know abortion funds exist. Many who don't, are very similar to Aisha's beautiful story. Like, they get caught up in a crisis pregnancy center, right? And don't know where to go after that. So I think it's really important for us to raise awareness about abortion funds, break abortion stigma. If you have an abortion story, tell it. Like, that does make a difference, right? But then tier 2 is kind of echoing more what Torina was talking about, and like thinking electorally, how can we redefine our systems to open up access? And in this democratic society, the main way to do that is through voting, is through civic engagement, but to also help people realize that voting is one part of collective liberation. It's not the end all be all. Like, once you vote, you also have to continue to engage with the legislature, hold your lawmakers accountable, and make sure that abortion is top of mind for your neighbors, for your community. I take so much pride as a lawmaker who has always prioritized abortion, even if it wasn't, the topic of the day, right? Because right now I feel like a lot of people are talking about abortion compared just to 5 years ago, right? And I think that's, obviously a positive, but it's also kind of like, imagine if we had this level of engagement 5 years ago, like where we be right now, right? So like, let's not fall for those traps again, right? Like, let's and expand your tent. Like, we need more allies, and I do think that I've been in some spaces sometimes where, you know, especially folks who've been in the movement for a long time can kind of also operate as gatekeepers, and just to remind us to like, don't operate like that. Open up your heart to more people, because we're not going to do this alone.
So great. I think, I don't know about you all, but I think she just nailed it, right? I mean,
Can I add one last thing?
yes, please, Aisha. I was just gonna ask if you had something to add.
I agree with everything that Anna said, but I just wanted to add one more thing. Start talking to women around you about your abortion experience. Stop thinking that it's a taboo. Stop feeling like you're a bad person for making a decision that was best for you. The more that we talk about it with each other, it kills the stigma of it, which makes us stronger. Talk to men about it too. Talk to men about abortions. Like, it doesn't have to be about your abortion, but talk to them about the information of it, because it affects them too. It affects their lives as well. And I think more allies that are male will also help us change legislation and stop the stigma around abortions.
Absolutely. Could not have said it better. So I am so grateful. We are perfectly on time. It is literally 6:59 on the East Coast. We promised an hour, and we're going to give it to you for an hour. Thank you so much, first of all, to our incredible advocates, allies, friends, partners, just the most fabulous people on earth, for everything that you do every day, for being who you are. And thank you to all of the people that you work with as well. Please share that appreciation. And I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you for bringing your curiosity, for engaging in this critical time. Think about everything that people said you can do. Tell your story, talk about this issue. Get involved locally, make sure that you're thinking about what you can do with your own resources to make sure that people who need abortion care and can't afford it can get it. All of those things really are going to be the thing that's going to turn this around. And keep in mind that your individual voice, your individual vote, your phone call to your local city council member or your state legislator, all of those things really make a difference. So in this, what has often been talked about as a really difficult time, we owe a deep gratitude to everyone here, but we also have to remember that we are together building a better future that will serve us better than the one that we've experienced in the past. So with that, I just want to thank everyone, and I wish everyone a wonderful evening, whatever time zone you happen to be in. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.